Hi guys, and welcome to All About the Philippines. In this video I'll be talking about my experience as someone living in Australia with his Filipino wife and my experiences going through the building process in the Philippines. I'll share what I've learnt from that experience, much of which I believe will be very valuable for anyone who is considering building a house in the Philippines. We'll get to that in just a moment. For those that may be interested, we have many videos of the gradual process of building our small hollow block Filipino style house in our House Building Philippines playlist on our home page of our channel. My wife and I had been talking about buying some land in the Philippines for some time, and from my perspective I felt it would be a good investment for when the day comes for me to retire, and we'd also have the option of either having our retirement in the Philippines or going for extended visits each year to the Philippines. And it would give me and my wife somewhere to live and stay instead of resorts or hotels. And over the years I've become quite attached to my Filipino family, and I thought it'd be a nice thing to do to give them a family home that they could truly call home, not having to move around, and something they would reasonably be comfortable in. Some important things right here to consider. I was married to my wife at this time for 5 years, and I was very certain of the strength in our relationship. Now, to me that's important when building a house in the Philippines. As you guys may or may not know, a foreigner cannot own land in the Philippines. In some areas he may be able to lease, and I think that lease can be up to 50 years, but the land title will be all in the Filipina's name. Now what that means simply is that the wife owns the land, and should the relationship break down at any point in the future, the land is hers, and so would the house that sits on the land, unless it's a relocatable type of house that you could get a truck to come in and cart it off. The other factor I considered, even though my relationship is very strong, one never really knows what the future holds in 5, 10 or even 20 years. So for me, I wasn't prepared to build a Western style house in the Philippines that may cost $80,000 to $150,000, and for that price we certainly could have built a nice house, but I wasn't prepared to lose that amount should the day ever come that my wife and I were to go our separate ways. My view has always been that when building in a foreign country, never invest more than you are prepared to lose. And I know very little about building anywhere, let alone in the Philippines, so who knows what could happen internally in that country that could affect the house or me in some way. So my wife and I spoke about this, and together we set a budget of 20,000 Australian dollars to buy a small block of land and then build a simple, small, hollow block Filipino style home. And remember guys, my wife is here in Australia and she's been working very hard for the last 5.5 years to contribute greatly to this house. So it's not just all my money, it's our money going into this. After some time of searching and my wife chatting to her family and friends, we came up with buying a 200 square metre lot in the province of Pangasinan in the city of Urdaneta. Now the reason for the location was because it was out of the major city of Manila and around about 3 hours or so north of Manila. So that way Manila was also accessible on the odd occasion we may like to go there, and it was around about 90 minutes to the west of Subic Bay and the water, and around about 3 hours or so north to Baguio, which is one of our favourite spots to visit in the Philippines, and also around about 3 hours or so north to Cabra, where some of my wife's family members live. So it was a really convenient location for us. And another big factor that we did consider was that the city of Urdaneta, while it's not a huge city, it's still a good size and you can get all your needs in that city. And even more important was the fact that my sister-in-law would be residing in the house with a couple of teenage children who would be able to complete their high school and college or university education and then go on to get employment all in that city. So this would provide stability, and they wouldn't have to go off to Manila after they complete their education like so many other kids do in the Philippines. And of course I did all my online research around Erdaneta City, and it did show some big reductions in crime, and it won several different awards for various things. So it said to me it was quite a progressive city that was going in the right direction. So the land cost us 400,000 pesos, which at that time was around about 10,000 Australian dollars. And of course we're here in Australia, so my wife had to get a power of attorney drawn up, send it over to the Philippines, which then allowed her sister to sign the contract and pay the money on behalf of my wife. So out of our original budget of 20,000 Australian dollars, we've now spent 10, so we've got 10,000 Australian dollars left to get a small house built. My idea was just a very simple house, around about 50 square metres in size, with possibly 2 bedrooms and a living area and a toilet. And our thought at that time was that if we wanted to extend the house either upways or sideways at a later date, that we'd be able to do so. Now guys, here's the biggest warning of all, and the one big regret of mine. We were in Australia at the time of the build. We had my sister-in-law who lives in Manila to coordinate the project. So she would need to go up to the province to find an engineer and his team, which she did, and organise a set contract price, which she also did. The engineer had agreed upon the price of 180,000 pesos to complete the house, which included digging the trenches and preparing it so we could build on top of the house later on if we wished, and there was an agreed completion date as well. And I want to stress at this point that the problems that came about from this were not in any way my sister-in-law's fault, but really if you're planning to build any type of house in the Philippines, you really need to be there to supervise the entire build. And it's something I certainly wish I'd done, and you guys really need to think hard on that one. And to cut a long story short, around a lot of the issues that we had, you can check out the various stages in the house building Philippines playlist on my YouTube channel homepage. But the engineer ended up realising that he couldn't deliver what he'd promised for the budget he had agreed on, so he became harder for my sister-in-law to contact, and the workers started to disappear off the site. When my sister-in-law was able to contact him, he had many excuses that lasted many weeks. In the end, my sister went to the barangay, lodged a complaint. She and the police even went to try and have a chat with him at his home, but he could not be found. I ended up saying to my sister-in-law to find other builders so we can get the project completed. So the new builders were found, which we agreed to pay them a daily rate. And a very strange thing happened. There was one guy that turned up who wasn't even a paid employee, and he was giving orders to all the workers like he's the supervisor. Me being here in Australia knew nothing of this man until a few weeks later. We saw him in some pictures and I asked about who this guy was. The house was continuing along quite nicely, but the house looked to me in the pictures that it was much bigger than the small 50 square metres we wanted or budgeted for. And it turned out that the guy who was not on the payroll that was telling all the workers to make it bigger and to include things that we'd never asked for or wanted at this time. We ended up getting this guy kicked off our site, which he really wasn't happy about, and he even went to the place we were getting our supplies from and tried to have them not sell to us anymore. So at this point in time, I wanted to get our money back from the first engineer, as he failed to deliver on the contract, and the work that he'd done around the walls was of terrible quality, and even the inspector from the local municipality told us that most of the walls would need to be taken down as they were not safe, and new rebars and concrete posts need to be also done because what that first engineer had built was way below standards even for the Philippines. So my sister-in-law tried in vain to contact and get this engineer to refund our money, and he kept on making excuses and even refusing to pay anything back. So I ended up finding him on Facebook and contacted him through Messenger. For several days he was just playing games with me and stalling, and eventually I told him that unless we got our money back, I would create a video on my YouTube channel warning people of his building practices. Still, he didn't agree to refund anything, so I did create a video and I did post it, and I did pay a few dollars for some Facebook targeted ads to run in Pangasinan. Within a day he contacted me on Facebook because many people he knew had seen the video and he knew it would cost him clients. I made an agreement with him to repay us 58,000 pesos via building supplies of my choice, as he didn't have the cash, but he had accounts with building supply centres, and I didn't seek the full amount from him because there had been some digging the trenches type of work done, which would have cost some money. And for us to come to that agreement, it did take several days of a lot of chatting back and forward for him to agree to that, and I did agree at that point in time I would suspend the video pending delivery of all the building supplies that he'd agreed upon, which certainly did go a long way to helping us get the house built. And I've got to say that through all that back and forth chatting on Facebook Messenger with this guy, not once did he actually abuse me or swear at me or anything. There was a bit of frustration at times, but he was actually very, very respectful, so I'll give him credit for that much. So obviously now, with all these problems that were going on, the budget had been blown a bit and things were getting more expensive as time went by. And every time we thought the builders had all they need to complete the house, there'd always be something else they'd be asking for: more sand, more gravel, rebars, cement, and the list goes on. The labour hire of the workers was around 400 to 600 pesos per worker per day, depending on their job, which I think was pretty good value. But obviously the bigger the project, the longer it goes, the more expenses in wages as well. And the problem for us, apart from that first engineer, was the house went from supposedly 50 square metres, which we asked for, to 115 square metres, and with that comes more of everything to build it. We, being in Australia, picked up on it far too late. Had I been there watching the build, it would never have got to that stage. So now the house has 3 bedrooms, a kitchen, living room, and an outside toilet and shower, which in the end may not be a bad thing, so we live with what's happened. So all up, we almost completed the house for around about 20,000 Australian dollars. Few things are still required to fully finish it, but it does have the doors, windows, roof. Still it needs a ceiling, a fence, inside toilet, rendering and painting. So our original budget that we set for 20,000 for the land and a small house is now going to be closer to 40,000 Australian dollars by the time it comes to full completion. So guys, there's another tip right there. Always allow more money than you anticipated at the start. And the way of building in the Philippines is far different to that of countries like USA or Australia. So don't be shy in telling the builders exactly what you want. Make no mistake that the stress that we suffered from this was very tough for especially my wife and my 2 sister-in-laws in the Philippines. At times there were some arguments between my wife and her sisters, which was upsetting to see. They did quickly get over it and all is fine, but it was unnecessary, and if ever I was to build anything ever again in the Philippines, I'd most certainly be sure to be there for the entire build so the project is done correctly without too much of a budget blowout, and it doesn't cause stress and worry or conflict to my loved ones. One other thing to be sure is to use better quality blocks. Ensure the cement is strong and not watered down, and the foundations are deep and strong. Use the steel roofing trusses with the roof welded on very well, so getting a good experienced welder is important there. Anyway guys, that's my experience and mistakes from our first and possibly last build in the Philippines. I hope this video may help those avoid the pitfalls that we found, and your build is much smoother as a result. If you've enjoyed the video or found the information useful, please hit the like button. Feel free to share the video with all your networks and subscribe to our friendly community if you haven't done so already. and press the bell icon to get more videos. Thanks very much for watching. I appreciate all your support. Take care and bye for now.